Jerusalem Dateline. The coup attempt in Turkey is over, but aftershocks could reverberate around the world. Plus, 10 years after Israel battled Hezbollah in Lebanon, both sides are stronger than ever. Are they getting ready for the next fight? And artifacts in the Holy Land are bringing the Bible to life. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl, filling in for Chris Mitchell. We're coming to you today from the Haas Promenade overlooking the city of Jerusalem. The recent coup attempt in Turkey shook an important Middle East nation to its foundation, but the aftershocks could reverberate beyond the Middle East. Chris Mitchell tells us why.
Since Turkish President Erdogan and his supporters defeated July's attempted coup, he's dismissed or arrested thousands of soldiers, judges, and teachers. The government also shut down more than 130 media outlets. Erdogan blamed a man named Fethullah Gulen for the coup. The two were former allies, but after falling out have become bitter enemies. Gulen fled Turkey in 1999 and gained asylum in the U.S. He now controls a large movement from his Pennsylvania home, including many supporters inside Turkey. He denies any involvement in the coup, but Erdogan's purge seems designed to target many of them.
Gulen had millions of supporters. If you accuse any one of them now and see any one of them as responsible for this failed and stupid coup, what do you do with these millions of people? Well, will they not be able to work? So how wide is the circle that you are punishing for this coup is a big question.
Former Israeli diplomat Alon Liel says Erdogan took power in 2002 and began a quiet Islamic revolution. He slowly reversed secular reforms put in place by former President Kemal Ataturk in the 1920s.
All the bureaucracy was secular, and he was a religious leader. He wanted to change Turkey.
There is no due process now in Turkey. We have a dictator. We have a sultan. His name is Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Harold Rode, the former head of the Turkish desk in the Pentagon, says Erdogan has ambitious goals.
And his goal is to basically bring back Islam as the ruling identity of the entire Islamic world. His way, his Sunni particular way, it's my way or the highway, and then to take the entire Muslim world and to advance Islam to take over the entire world. Erdogan, it seems to me, would like to be that caliph of the entire Muslim world and eventually the entire world.
Erdogan once said, democracy is like a streetcar. You ride it until you get to your destination. As a NATO member, Turkey's coup response and Erdogan's consolidation of power are setting off alarms in the West.
Erdogan has used that coup as an opportunity to destroy any remnants of democracy in Turkey. People are petrified. He has arrested over 50,000 people. He has given an order that any Turkish academic abroad must return home. If I were a Turkish academic in the United States or in Europe, I'd right away be asking for asylum.
Liel says the coup provided Erdogan the ammunition to accelerate his revolution. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The recent attack on a Catholic church in France was a major step for ISIS. It was the first time that ISIS attacked a church in the West. But as Chris Mitchell reports, some fear it won't be the last.
When two ISIS-inspired terrorists murdered 86-year-old Catholic priest Jacques Hamel in a French town, the attack sent shockwaves through France and the Western world.
On va avoir des mal à médecin. On a peur. On a partout. On n'a pas de sécurité nulle part. J'espère que ça va se calmer. J'espère que les gens ils vont être raisonnés, ils vont être intelligents. Ils vont pas faire ça. C'est pas bien de faire ça. Soit chrétien, musulman, soit n'importe quoi. Il faut être ensemble.
they've been suffering this kind of fate for years and years now. This is one of the saddest untold or unfocused parts of the post 9/11 world, that the Christians and their ministers have been suffering atrociously in the Middle East, and this war, this jihadi tactic, has now been brought to Europe and to the continent, and we should probably expect more.
In the past several months, Islamic terror has swept over the West, from Brussels to both Paris and Nice, as well as reaching the U.S. in Orlando, Florida.
America is the greatest nation on God's earth. It is the most powerful nation the world has ever seen. And the idea that after thousands of dead, after trillions spent, the jihadis are still winning this war, there is no excuse.
Counterterrorism expert Dr. Sebastian Gorka blames the refusal to name the enemy as a major reason for continued losses.
In fact, under today's Obama administration, you can't even talk accurately or honestly about who the enemy is. You can't mention religion. Words such as jihad are in fact officially prohibited. When you talk to our military, when you provide training to our federal law enforcement, you're not supposed to even discuss these issues. That's an edict that comes right out of the White House.
In his new book, Defeating Jihad, The Winnable War, Gorka says leaders need to take a close look at the Cold War.
How did we win that war? We didn't fire a shot on November 9th, 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell. We won it by delegitimizing their message, by making communism look bankrupt, by making the people behind the Iron Curtain want to take it apart themselves with their own hands. That's what we have to do today.
Gorka also believes the West needs to actively empower Muslim nations like Jordan and Egypt to take on ISIS and recognize Islamic extremism for what it is.
The idea that you can't call a jihadi, that has to be jettisoned on day one. Talk about the enemy as they talk about themselves, truthfully, and recognize that they are evil.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
A Hamas operative who infiltrated the Christian relief agency World Vision siphoned off more than $40 million for the terrorist organization Hamas. Much of the money was given by Christians around the world to help Palestinians, but Israel said it was used instead to buy rockets, dig tunnels to attack Israel, and for other Hamas military projects. World Vision released a statement and said it was shocked by the charges against its manager in Gaza, Mohammed El-Halabi. Israel said World Vision may not be the only humanitarian aid organization deceived by Hamas. See why ISIS isn't the biggest threat facing Israel. Egypt says it killed the leader of ISIS in Sinai, who was the mastermind behind the attack on a Russian airliner that killed 224 people. For more than 2 years, much of the world has focused on ISIS as a common enemy. But for Israel, ISIS joins the long list of enemies committed to its destruction. That list includes the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. And as Chris Mitchell reports, this enemy to the north remains Israel's most dangerous foe on its borders.
It's happened before, terrorists infiltrating Israel. That's why these reservists are training in northern Israel to prevent such an attack.
We're training for a number of scenarios where they're coming from the sea, air, and land.
Reserve Colonel Zvika Halperin, a home front commander, is responsible for the Western Galilee, an area with a population of 600,000.
We are training the authorities for emergency situations, dangerous substance events, events where missiles fall, also from Lebanon, also from Syria, infiltrations of all kinds of forces.
And in northern Israel, that's the Lebanese-based Iranian proxy, Hezbollah.
Hezbollah is vastly more powerful than in terms of its core military capabilities, its missiles, its rockets, its ground forces, than are any of the other Islamist militias, which also wish Israel harm. So Hezbollah remains by far the main threat.
10 years ago, Hezbollah crossed the border, attacking and killing 10 Israeli soldiers, and holding the bodies of 2 of them hostage for years. The incident sparked a war lasting 34 days. Middle East expert Jonathan Spire fought in a tank unit. He told CBN News Israel wasn't prepared.
Many units, infantry units, armored units, went into the war having not trained adequately in the previous years because they'd been very busy fighting that insurgency in the West Bank and in Gaza.
Hezbollah launched more than 4,000 rockets and missiles at northern Israel at a rate of more than 100 per day. That put 1 million Israeli civilians within range. Near the war's end, CBN founder Pat Robertson traveled to Israel's northern border and spoke with then IDF Ground Forces Commander General Benny Gantz.
It sounds strange. The year 2006, and people still think that they can destroy Israel as a people and as a nation.
They can't do it.
And they are the overreach of Ahmadinejad, who simply talks about destroying the Jewish people, complaining to the Germans why they didn't finish it in the Second World War.
Will you finish it so that they cease to be a significant force in Lebanon? Or are you going to have to stop?
We'll have to consider it operationally speaking. There are two issues. One is the political level. They have to decide what they want to do, to coordinate it with the international committee and stuff.
Yes, all right.
Operationally speaking, we know how to stay on the ground, how to move. I hope we won't get into a situation that we are stuck in one point.
Since then, the situation has worsened. A refortified Hezbollah appears stronger than ever and still wants to finish off Israel.
We're talking about over 100,000 missiles that they have in southern Lebanon ready to be launched to Israel. We estimate that in any conflict in the future, 1,500 missiles a day will be launched to Israel. That's a real threat.
Retired IDF Colonel Kobi Marom says Israel knows the missile locations, but in any future conflict, they will face challenges in attacking Hezbollah.
They build their bunkers, tunnels, and missile sites under the civilian population, under hospitals, under UN position, under schools, because they know when the pictures of the civilian death come to the people in New York City, Paris, or London, the game is over. That's why they use the life of their people as a tool in their struggle against Israel. That's the reality today in Lebanon.
Marom says Hezbollah has obtained better technology and longer-range missiles that can reach all of Israel. Plus, their numbers have grown from 7,000 terrorists to more than 40,000.
They're also gaining a great deal of experience in areas of combat they didn't know about before, fighting in unfamiliar areas, fighting in urban settings, not stuff they'd done before.
Spire told CBN News that although Hezbollah is stronger, it's distracted by the war in Syria.
Well, the thing with Hezbollah is that, of course, they are now bogged down in a very different war, not a war that they ever wanted. That's the war to protect Bashar Assad's regime in Syria.
Iran and Hezbollah support Assad because his country helps Iranian weapons make it to Lebanon.
The bottom line is, for as long as the Syrian war continues, it is extremely unlikely that Hezbollah will be able to afford itself the luxury, so to speak, of hitting at Israel and opening up a second front against an enemy, vastly more powerful than the Syrian rebels they're currently engaged in fighting against.
Spire says, fortunately, Israel is also better prepared.
I think Israel is better prepared because I think the army underwent something of a change of focus following the 2006 war, understanding that Hezbollah is an enemy of a different nature, that Hezbollah is the main ground threat to Israel today, and that requires an army, effective and able to respond.
And as long as Israel is not fighting in any regional conflicts, Spire says the main goal will be to keep its borders safe and prepared to take on any invaders. Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Up next, did the U.S. pay Iran $400 million for the release of 4 Americans in January? That story when we come back. A report in the Wall Street Journal says the Obama administration gave $400 million to Iran in January, just as the regime was releasing 4 Americans from a Tehran prison. Republicans accuse the president of paying ransom for hostages. The White House says the money was just the first installment in a $1.7 billion settlement from a nearly 40-year-old arms deal. Some lawmakers fear the money could end up in the hands of Iranian allies like Hezbollah or Syrian President Assad. On this story, our reporter Jenna Browder spoke with Emmanuel Ottolenghi from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies at our Washington, D.C. bureau.
The U.S. government, the White House, receiving some flack right now for apparently sending $400 million to Iran in some pretty secretive circumstances. Your thoughts, sir?
We knew about a money transfer which the administration had briefly alluded to back in January, but we did not know the details. And the details are disturbing because if this was something, as the administration claims, that had no relation with the release of hostages, no bearings on the nuclear agreement, and it was just part of a long-standing dispute and the result of an arbitration, whereby the U.S. was paying money back to Iran, which already belonged to Iran, then why do it in such a mysterious, covered-up way? The administration arranged for money to be transferred to European governments, who then provided cash, gold, and money in different currencies to be transported in an unmarked plane in the middle of the night in a very mysterious way. If it had been done in reverse, we would have called it a criminal operation designed to money launder and obfuscate the sources of the cash.
And Iranian media is reporting that this was in fact ransom money. The White House saying the opposite.
Correct. The Iranian position is that they released a number of unjustly detained U.S. citizens and nationals, and that the money was delivered to them in a way in exchange for that release, so that the two actions were timed together. And as we know now from media coverage following the release of the story, there indeed was a discussion inside the administration about the possibility that the event would be interpreted that way by the Iranians, and there was therefore opposition inside parts of the administration were not so keen on seeing this action move forward in such a way.
And does this set a precedent down the road? Does this put a bounty on Americans' heads overseas?
Well, the Iranians definitely think that they can continue to unjustly detain foreign nationals and use them as leverage to obtain concessions of all kinds. Money was transferred at the same and timed in a way that it looks like it was ransom, suggests that the Iranians are now being encouraged to do more of the same.
On the international stage, how does this look? How does this make the United States look?
The United States has considerably lost its standing in the world in the last 8 years. Its leverage has been lost consequently. The U.S. influence, particularly in the Middle East, has been damaged by the foreign policy of the current administration, and it is important that whether comes January it is President Trump or President Clinton to address these challenges, there is a full debate during the campaign season about how to rectify the direction this country has taken, which in the eyes of many people, both here and abroad, is the wrong direction.
All right. Well, sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, see artifacts that bring the Bible to life. Thousands of Christians visit biblical sites in Israel each year. Now they can enjoy a new tour that uses artifacts to bring to life details from the time of Jesus. This giant model of Jerusalem from the Second Jewish Temple period begins the Cradle of Christianity tour. Visitors to the Israel Museum see artifacts that will enhance stories in the Bible.
This is Jerusalem that Jesus knew. This is Jerusalem that Herod the Great built.
Senior curator David Mevorach said the model will give Christians a better perspective of specific areas mentioned in Scripture.
The model, built in a scale of 1 to 50, shows these important sites that Jesus goes through. For instance, on my left are the pools of Bethesda, where Jesus performs one of his miracles of healing. It's all in the surrounding of this city, which has only one temple for one God.
The famous shrine of the book housing the Dead Sea Scrolls is the next stop. The scrolls include the oldest copies of books of the Hebrew Bible. And then there's the Temple Mount.
We still have the supporting walls of the Temple Mount. The Wailing Wall is the western wall of the support of this huge project, but only very few finds were left from the buildings itself. One of them is an inscription in Hebrew, a sign for the priest to stand and blow the horn for the entrance of Saturday, meaning the time to cease work, and again at the exit of Saturday when you can resume work. The other sign is in Greek. It is the perimeter that surrounded the temple itself in the Temple Mount, with signs in Greek and in Latin forbidding Gentiles to enter the temple itself.
According to Mevorach, it's rare to find artifacts that directly relate to historical figures.
In the case of the trial and crucifixion of Jesus, we've been extremely lucky. 3 finds relate directly to the story and to the details, and 2 of them relate directly to the most important people in these final days of Jesus.
One is an ossuary, a burial bone box inscribed with the name Joseph, son of Caiaphas, the high priest.
We are almost 100% sure that this is the Caiaphas that we know from the stories in the New Testament.
The second is a stone bearing the name of Pontius Pilate. And perhaps the most interesting artifact for Christians is evidence of the Roman practice of crucifixion found in a bone box.
This is the only find in the whole world of actual crucifixion.
And what do visitors have to say?
Just seeing the artifacts made it come alive, and to see what I've read about made it come alive in my life.
To see so many artifacts of world history and of our Christian faith in one place so quickly, and to be able to comprehend it so quickly is just really amazing, and it really confirms our faith. It confirms what the Bible teaches us, and teaches us the place of our Christian faith within world history context. It's outstanding.
That's it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.